each and every one of you for joining us this afternoon. We especially wish to thank John Jay College of Criminal Justice for providing this wonderful location for us. We also wish to express our deepest appreciation to Left Forum organizers Seth Adler and Marcus Grage. Without their continued support all year long, this panel would never have happened. We're here today to tell you the story about military families and about how we've been betrayed by our government. And we're doing so that you in turn will be motivated to stay in the struggle. And if you become a slacktivist, we hope that you will be inspired to re-up and commit yourself to act with renewed vigor. Our moderator today is Phil Donahue, one of the best known television talk show hosts in U.S. history. His innovative talk show was on the air for over 29 years. And so it is still hard for many of us to believe that he was fired from his popular primetime talk show in 2003, which was during the build-up to the war in Iraq. Apparently he had too many of us anti-war voices on his show because an internal memo was leaked shortly after that stated that Phil Donahue was a difficult public face for NBC during a time of war, and that he was providing a home for the liberal anti-war agenda when all of their competitors were waving the flag at every opportunity. In 2007, however, we were very, very grateful that he and Ellen Spiro produced and directed the award-winning documentary Body of War. You can find your copy or get one at our Military Family Speak Out table upstairs. Please welcome our distinguished host and good friend, Phil Donahue.
Thanks, Marlo thinks I've had enough applause most of my life. Well, this is a big deal for me. Foremost among the benefits of my invitation here is to meet again CATHY Smith, Thomas Young's mother. I parachuted into this family and said, we'd like to make a movie about your son. And innocently, CATHY said, oh, fine. And for the next 4 to 5 years, we knocked over her furniture, bumped into everything, including her own self, and covered just about everything there was to see about the life of a family who received a catastrophically injured son from the Iraq War. I talked to her son Thomas and told him what I wanted to do. I said, Thomas, this is the most sanitized war in my lifetime. The president said you can't take pictures of the coffins, and the press corps said, okay. And I said, Thomas, I think if we're going to send young men and women in this euphemistically called harm's way, show the pain, show the sacrifice. What went on in this home? By the way, these injuries turned the whole family upside down. I ought to know. I had a front seat to it. I saw what this did to the CATHY loomed over her son. Thomas couldn't walk. Thomas couldn't cough. Primal life male, impotent, because of the T4 is on the spine where the bullet transected, went through the collarbone and out the spine, paralyzed from the nipples down. Thomas was a rag doll. picked him up once, and that's when you really feel it. When I lifted him out of the chair, I was forcefully reminded of how totally helpless he was. And he was that way for over 10 years. In bed, subsequently suffered a pulmonary embolism, made him even more handicapped. He had limited use of his arms. He couldn't hold silverware, had to be fed. Kathy would have to find some place in the restaurant where people wouldn't stare. The sacrifice of these families was never seen. They never saw Kathy pick up her son and help him into the bed from the wheelchair. And when they finally got to the mattress, and he was deposited on the mattress, he would bounce like a rag doll. Wolfowitz didn't see this. Dick Cheney never saw this, nor did George Bush. We have laptop bombers in Washington who can't wait to prove they're tough and will send Kathy's son to make the case. These are the same people who avoided the draft when they were eligible to serve.
Chicken hawks.
Chicken hawks was the word we used. Now here's the situation. We know this. I'm preaching to the choir. The issue is, why don't more people know this? And that's what we intend to do. We've taken it upon ourselves to tell them this. It takes 6 minutes to get into a war and 60 years to get out. The injuries that have been suffered in this so-called war, unconstitutionally declared, in both Iraq, Afghanistan, and the fallout in Syria and other places, will rattle around this nation for the rest of this century. And this is what we want our leaders to know before they say, bring it on. And in a moment, we'll meet Kathy. But first we want you to meet some real heroes. You know, I've been talking. These are the people who've been doing. You know, no telethons for me. I did lose a job because of my posture, my political stance against the invasion of Iraq. No sad songs for me. You know, I got a little money and I'm walking around still. And, you know, I mean, it was certainly much less a sacrifice for me than it would be for somebody who had 2.5 kids and maybe early 30s and reporting to a Republican at work. So it was easier for me to pop off than it would be for other people. And it was much easier for me than it was for the people on this panel. Let's begin with Ray McGOVERN. Ray is from his native Bronx and went to Washington in the early 60s as an Army infantry intelligence officer. I mean, this is a man who did, you know? This is inside baseball right here. He served as a CIA analyst for 27 years, from the administration of John F. Kennedy to that of George H.W. Bush. Ray's duties included chairing national intelligence estimates and preparing the president's daily brief, which he briefed one-on-one President Reagan's 5 most senior national security advisors from 1981 to 85. In 2003, Ray helped create Vietnam Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, VIPs, to expose the way intelligence was being falsified to justify an Iraq. We are left to wonder, as we consider Ray's biography, why didn't more people, who they saw this, he wasn't the only one who saw this, why didn't they resign? Why didn't they protest? Why didn't they stand up? Well, it's easier said than done. On the early afternoon of May 4th, 2006 in Atlanta, Ray confronted Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld on live TV with pointed questions like, why did you get us into this war that was not necessary and that has caused these kinds of casualties? Ray is particularly fond of the substitute teaching he has been invited to do at universities and colleges. At George Washington University, though, he quickly wore out his welcome when he stood silently with his back turned toward then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. That's what I mean. Really, these people risk everything. This is courage. Thank you. Thank you. You helped me during the movie, too. I watched her loom over her son in the hospital with all the hoses coming out of his mouth and every orifice in his body, half whacked out on morphine. It was awful. None of us who worked on this film will ever, ever forget it. It was a spiritual experience, a chapter of our lives. So here's Ray, well-raised Ray McGovern. Wow. He turns his back on Hillary Clinton. He was seized and badly beaten while Clinton spoke eloquently about the need for freedom of expression. In Iran. In Iran. Ray and his wife have been married for 52 years. They have 5 children and 9 grandchildren. Here's Ray McGovern, right?
Can you hear me back there? You can, all right. Thank you so much, Phil. Wow. There's so much to say here, but the subject is betrayal. And Phil is right on that this war was a betrayal. You can hear people still say that the mistake of intelligence was really just terrible, and that was the cause for the war. That's a lie, another lie. The intelligence was not mistaken. It was out and out fraud, and I'm highly embarrassed to know that my former colleagues participated full scale in that fraud. Now, the task these days is to prove that, because people still don't know what's going on, because people like Phil aren't in the media, right? And so there are lots of things to cite. There are things like what Condoleezza Rice said just 6 weeks before the war, namely, Saddam Hussein has no weapons of mass destruction. He's not even a threat to his immediate neighbors. I have it on film, check it out. Or Colin Powell a few months before that. You don't get weapons of mass destruction descending like manna from the heavens for a soft landing on Iraq, where God made that terrible mistake of putting our oil. It doesn't work that way, guys, you know? So, now I have to confess to a bit of bias here. I'm Irish, okay? And my grandfather took me aside when I was 12. He said, "Now, Raymond, you need to know something about why they say the sun never sets on the British Empire." I said, "I know that." He said, "You don't know that. Sit down and I'll tell you." And he said, "The sun never sets on the British Empire because the good Lord would never trust the British in the dark." Now, there's a point to that remark, because the best evidence, the kind of evidence that intelligence analysts, and I dare say detectives or police, actually lust after, is documentary evidence, sworn to by the people who created it as authentic. We have those in the Downing Street Memorandum, which got very little play in this press, in this media, surprise, surprise. But what I'd like to do is just show you some excerpts from it to see what a telling tale it tells about the chicanery, about the betrayal. Good, we have the first slide up there. This is a memo written by David Manning, who is Tony Blair's chief foreign policy advisor. And you can see the usual suspects there on the CC line. And the subject is a meeting at Downing Street on the 23rd of July, 2002, so about 8 months before the war, right? Okay, well, what was the background here? Well, Blair had sworn allegiance to Bush in Crawford in April of 2002. Bush said, we're going to do a war. We're going to do a war on Iraq. Are you with me? Are you in? And Bush said, yes, I'm in, sir. Yes, I'm in. Well, they kept talking about every other week on the phone, but that doesn't suffice if you're going to participate in a war, right? So Blair says, maybe, how can I find out what Bush is really thinking? And he sends his chief of intelligence to CIA headquarters for a session on Saturday, the 20th of July, 2002. And I know people who were there, okay? They go in a one-on-one sort of situation, and this is what George Tenet told the head of British intelligence as concretized in this memo, which was a memcon of the meeting 3 days later, convened by Blair, okay? The memo writer says, this is very sensitive, further copies should not be made. Okay, now, this is the beauty of whistleblowers. Somebody whistle-blew this. Somebody gave it to the London Times, no left-wing rag, the London Times, okay? And on the 1st of May 2005, this is what it said. C, that's an affectation, a kind of a conceit. The head of British intelligence cannot be named. His name was Sir Richard Dearlove, and he became a knight after his performance here. Anyhow, Dearlove met with Tenet at CIA headquarters on the 20th of July, and this is what he reported. Military action was now seen as inevitable. Do we have that up? Yep. Okay. Bush wanted to remove Saddam through military action, justified by the conjunction of terrorism and, you know it, weapons of mass destruction. So what was the deal? Translated from the British, we're going to say there's all manner of weapons of mass destruction, and that he's going to give them to terrorists, okay? Now, the key sentence was this. But the intelligence and facts were being fixed around the policy. Wow. Now, when Fox News got a hold of this, they did a quick kind of sort of consultation. They said, oh, now I know what we say. Fixed has an entirely different meaning in British. So I called my friend Harry, in London. I said, Harry, you got a minute? Yeah, sure. You tell me what fixed means. Come on, Ray, what are you, losing? He says, you fix a horse race, you fix an election. Fixed is fixed, after all, right? Now, that's documentary evidence. That's something that Tony Blair has acknowledged as authentic. The rest of the thing I won't go into because time is limited, but the whole notion was, well, if we have to fix the intelligence, maybe we could get Saddam Hussein to prohibit the introduction of UN inspectors, and that way we'd say, well, there's another reason. He's hiding these things. That didn't work out. UN inspectors went in there. They went into all his palaces. They went into his bathrooms. They went everywhere. They didn't find anything. So what's the result of this? These are consequential betrayals. These are consequential lies. And I want to show you the outcome of lies like this. I have two photos that I would like to show you. Can we put the first photo up there?
Oops, I'm sorry.
That's not it. It's the one of Samar Hassan, who, there it is. Now that's Samar and one of her cousins. Samar, in the other photo, is shown to be dripping with blood, the blood of her parents and her 4 siblings, killed because they didn't hear the U.S. sentries say stop in Tal Afar early in the war. Now, this is the human consequences, and this is what we need to pay attention to. And the other people, let me just put it this way. I was on TV one time. My granddaughter in Oakland was 6 years old at the time. She watched it with my daughter, and after it, she said, "Mommy, that was Grandpa." And Kathleen said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, Mommy, that means the rest of the people are real too." Wow. You get it? Okay, you're the only crowd that gets that, all right? Yes. Right. If you don't see the pictures, the rest of the people aren't real too. Now, we know enough to do things about this. Each of us has to take a stand in whatever endeavor or whatever way of life we're in, And I'd just like to ask my friend Matt, before he gets to the podium, to read what's on the back of the shirt that the Veterans for Peace gave me after I got beat up by Hillary Clinton's folks.
First, there's this working? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. First, there's a quote at the top from Father Dan Berrigan. Know where you stand and stand there. And then Ray had asked me earlier, don't read my quotes. Ray's against shameless self-promotion, I guess. But Ray has a quote on the shirt as well. Again, he asked me not to read it, but screw you, Ray, I'm going to read it. We stand against endless wars. Ray McGOVERN, VFP member. And then it says on the bottom, it says, this VFP shirt is issued in honor of Ray McGOVERN, commemorating his arrest for standing silently with his back to Hillary Clinton while she spoke in defense of freedom of expression, February 15, 2011. Now again, just to add more onto this though, this is not the only time Ray has been arrested. He's been arrested many, many times. Not the only time he has protested against power directly. Most recently here in New York City, where he was arrested before he even got a chance to protest General Petraeus. Didn't even have a chance to get in there and voice a protest. He was arrested by the NYPD before he even entered a public session, a public building. And then of course roughed up, spent the night in prison, and I'm sure he is actively preparing for his next arrest and beating.
This is not rehearsed. This is not rehearsed. So, just my last thing is to say, just know where you stand and stand there. Thanks.
Thank you, Ray.